Welcome to Category Visionaries, the show dedicated to exploring exciting visions for the future from the founders who are on the front lines building it. In each episode, we'll speak with a visionary founder who's building a new category or reimagining an existing one. We'll learn about the problem they solve, how their technology works, and unpack their vision for the future. I'm your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines Media. Now let's dive right into today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Category Visionaries. Today we're speaking with Dan Koukol, CEO and co-founder of Digit, a next-gen ERP that's raised $3.3 million in funding. Dan, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, Brett? Excited to be on the pod and to talk some business.
Yeah, excited to have you. How did you end up in this very, very sexy and glamorous world of ERP software?
Yeah, that's how I usually hear ERP described as sexy and glamorous. Great question. I've spent really my whole career, 13 years, working with manufacturers and distributors across the US. Over 100 now at this point. Consulted for them for about a decade and actually ran a manufacturer as CEO and experienced the pain firsthand. Used ERPs, any ERP, you name it. I could tell you the hex code, all the screens, tore these systems apart and really said, hey, where software is today with the emergence of AI and all of these tools, I think it's time that these ERPs get an upgrade. So started Digit and I've really been in this space for quite a while. I'm excited to bring modernization to the ERP space and actually make it sexy and glamorous.
So we're making it sexy again, or bringing sexy back. We could say, why do you think ERP hasn't evolved much? At least from my conversations, people they say it's like one of those software categories that's just frozen in time. A, is that true? Then B, if it is true, why is that the case?
I think there are a few reasons. Namely, I think to build an ERP, the original promise is to provide everything that an organization needs to do on one platform. So you're not building a niche product. You're building a product that's very large in scope. To build it is time consuming, it's very expensive. You compare that with really in the early 2000s, 2010s, startups were focused on building those small feature kind of niche products. That was the narrative, right? From VCs and everybody is find a niche and dominate it. And so you have this lack of startups taking these really big bets on creating big systems. And you have on the other side, kind of these incumbents that have become entrenched in the industry. They've built the scope and they've been able to kind of exert that power. When you have the emergence of systems of record now, where you have the Ripplings of the world consolidate these things onto a human resource information system, for example, and you have the emergence of AI that's allowing smaller development teams and startups to now match the scope that these incumbents have built over time, you're starting to see more of these types of disruptions take place.
I see. That makes sense. Now, for you, what's your POV on the ERP market? What's your specific angle? How do you view the world in a way that others don't think about it?
The most unique insight I think we have from a point of view is when you look at the nature of software and how these companies are interacting with it, you follow kind of the scissor tree. So one company says, hey, we want to be better. We want to buy SAP, buy NetSuite, buy legacy, whatever. And all of these systems really did a lot of good when they were launched. But management teams have kind of a misguided view where that's going to be the silver bullet that's going to take them from being a good company to a great company. They then go in and try to implement these systems and realize that even if the implementation is successful, at the end of the day, it's really just a lot of tables and a lot of forms and they're static. You're having to go in, you're having to teach people how to adopt it. You're having to know what it is you're looking for and extract it out. Our unique insight is that when you're looking at managing an organization and allowing it to become a great company, you need to start with the framework. The best way I explain it is imagine a 10 by 10 grid like in Excel, where the 100 cells represent everything as a company you need to be doing to be great. What we're doing is providing that grid, that framework in the system out of the box, saying these are all the things you have to be doing. You might only be doing a handful, and those are red, yellow, green. You might not be doing any, but we're going to tell you what it is you're not doing so you can actually start. And so legacy systems don't start with that framework. They just throw a bunch of modules at you and they kind of let you fend for yourself. With Digit, we provide that framework and we teach and guide you what do you need to do, what modules do you need to use, how do you need to use them in order to become a great company. That's the unique POV that we bring.
And for your ICP, does everyone already have an ERP? Is there anyone that's in your customer base that isn't using an existing ERP?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say 70% of the customers we talk to don't. And you can see that number increase if you move down market. If you're talking $0 to $20 million top line companies, a lot of the legacy systems have been prohibitive. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars on multi-year contracts that these companies just can't afford. 87% of the companies in the US, for example, have fewer than 50 employees. And that's typically a cutoff where we see they can't access the legacy big systems. So those systems have been reserved for the bigger players. 30% of those companies, I think, have used a legacy system or they've built an in-house system. We've seen things from access databases to custom PHP code, you name it. So we do see a good mix of both.
And I know you were previously CEO of a manufacturing company. Tell us about that journey, what you learned. And I'm guessing you developed an extreme amount of empathy for your ICP. What was that experience like? And what did you learn?
Yeah, one of the highlights of my career. So I consulted for almost a decade. And at the end of that, had the opportunity to take over a struggling manufacturing company. Struggling from a sense of it was a good company, had a great product, good team, good culture, product market fit, loyal customers, but it wanted to be a great company, but it was struggling with what we call the whirlwind. Inventory was slippery. There were things that the company had wanted to do for a number of years, but never got to. And this company was Prodigy Disc, makes disc golf discs in North Georgia. And within an 18-month period, was able to come in as a CEO, work with the team, implement a very early version of what we call the system of progress, this new kind of next-gen ERP, to do what we just described earlier, highlight, here's the map, here's all the things we need to be doing as a company. Here's what we're doing now. Here's what's red, yellow, green. Here's what we're not doing. And I was able to use that to drive alignment in the company. The whole team rose up. We're able to kind of march together towards that goal to do everything from decrease order fulfillment times, increase the number of products in our product line, optimize our pricing for our wholesale dealers, and a number of other initiatives to sales, marketing, finance, production, supply chain, you name it. One of the things that I talk about all the time, it's some of the most fun I had in my entire career.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode.
I would imagine that was a fun experience. What about the marketing of this whole thing? How have you approached marketing? What are you doing to build the brand?
Yeah, marketing is an amazing word. I feel like I could be a marketer in another life. So the big thing for us is, number one, tell a really good story and tell a narrative that people can get behind, not from a like fancy AI this, AI that, or ERP this or that, but go in and speak the language that people speak. We've been an operator. I can tell you, if you're a manufacturer, you probably have a workbench that, you have old inventory shelf and some plywood over it that you work on your tooling. Like, we've been in the day-to-day. We've gotten our shoes dirty. We've gotten our hands dirty. So our marketing is very much like, look, we've been in your shoes, but we also have been in all of these different businesses. We understand technology. We know where it's going. And so we are the ones that are going to be able to usher you into the digital age. If you want to learn about AI or get onto the system you can run your company from that's built for the future, the next 2 to 5 years, we're the system for you. So a lot of our marketing is getting into our customer's view, making our customer the hero of the story, because ultimately that's what it's all about. And then having some proof with products, social proof behind that, case studies to show people what that actually looks like.
When it comes to category creation, how are you thinking about the category? Is this, reimagining ERP? Is this totally dismantling ERP and calling it something different?
Yeah, I think a lot of the best categories we've seen created in the past, they have and use language strategically. I do think it is using something different than ERP. I think ERP, unfortunately, has a lot of negative connotations with slow, rigid, expensive. And I think for us, in order to win in this market, we have to create a blue ocean that other people aren't in. And I think you do that with language and positioning and marketing. You show them how, instead of just you have everything in one place, but instead of coming into pull, our system's alive and our system's telling you what to do. And parts of our system can actually go and do that stuff for you. And so that's the big part of us is, here's the new category. The digit's not an ERP, is kind of the framing. We are a system of progress. We're a system of action, one that you can use. If you want to become a great company and you want to tame the whirlwind internally, all you have to do is buy Digit, listen to what it tells you, go and implement it, and you'll see your business improve.
And what's that like for you competing against these giants that have been around forever? What do you do as a startup to convince customers to not go with the big companies? It sounds like for some of them, they can't afford it. So probably easy enough of a decision. But for those who could afford to go with one of the bigger companies, like, how do you compete head to head?
Yeah, It's a great question. On one hand, we have a lot of deep respect for what those companies were able to do to bridge the gap before those companies existed to them existing, and view ourselves as kind of taking the baton from them and ushering in the next layer. As far as a competition standpoint, we compete on speed. We compete on UI. We compete on flexibility of the product. We compete on delivery. We don't have a lot of third-party networks, consultants built out in economics where an internal sales team sells you the product and then we hand you off to other people to implement. We make it direct to consumer. Think about auto manufacturers sell to dealerships and Tesla selling direct to consumer. There's a lot of overlap there. But also we focus really on the non-technical user because that is the majority of users who interact with our ERP. Instead of, we have had customers who had to pay $15,000 to create a report. And we're like, why? That's crazy. Non-technical users can now configure and use the system and create new modules and do these workflows themselves within a couple clicks versus having to wait 6 months or longer to get, third parties to come in. So there's 7 main things that we use to compete head to head. Speed, design, flexibility, I think are the main ones.
How big's the marketing team?
Two people on the marketing team.
What have you learned so far about marketing and building out that marketing team?
I think the biggest thing on marketing, because we've come from the industry, we've known how to do the messaging, I think, pretty well. Obviously, we listen and we learn and we do a ton of experiments. But the biggest thing I think is how much leverage we've been able to generate with such a small team and so quickly. And there are so many tools out there. I mean, look at Google VO3 with the AI video and the stuff you can produce with that, right? Look at a lot of the automations you could do. Look at how you can personalize a lot of this messaging and target these accounts and walk them through. So there's a lot there that our team of 2 has been able to do really successfully. I think the biggest thing is the nature of go-to-market channels, especially for B2B vertical SaaS, how that's changed. Reddit is one of our best lead generation engines. That's something that did surprise us. We're learning, we're starting to get mentioned in all of the, whether you call it the AI SEO or, LLM or whatever it is, we're starting to get recommended through ChatGPT, through Grok, through Gemini, through Copilot. And so the biggest things we're learning in marketing is how to market it in the new AI age, how to get into these new channels, how to leverage these channels with our team of 2. And I'm sure there'll be many more experiments and lessons to learn from here.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their US and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
On the topic of Reddit, what are the subreddits you're targeting then? Is it like ERP? Is there an ERP community, a manufacturing community? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I wasn't as familiar with Reddit before Digit. I'm now becoming very familiar, and my co-founder Simon is a master. So there are communities for everything: ERP, inventory, warehouse management. There are even specific communities around the specific legacy systems being terrible. And it's just, people coming in and complaining thread after thread. So we really get into all of those, and we're looking at, we use it really for 2 things. One, we use it for product development. What are people really unhappy with these other products? And what do they really like? And how can we use that to influence our roadmap? And then we also use it for our typical lead generation. Hey, I'm looking for XYZ system. What would actually be good for my use case?
And is that an accident that you're getting picked up in the results for ChatGPT and Grok, or is there an intentional strategy there that's making that?
Yeah, there's an intentional strategy that's making that happen. So one of the things I think our team, especially as founders, but our broader team, I think that we've done extremely well is have a very close ear to the ground and follow all of the improvements and the tools that allow you to measure these things. So there's a couple YC companies, for example, that allow you to measure how often you're mentioned across AI models. And so as soon as they launch, we signed up, and we're using these new tools to measure and index and report on our internal scorecard, our system of progress. We built Digit for ourselves to use as well as a startup to measure. So very much intentional. Still a lot to learn, but something that we're actively doing.
I feel like everyone has a lot to learn, right? Because there is no defined playbook for traditional search. There's a go-to playbook for any search. I feel like everyone's just slowly trying to figure it out. Have you had to make any trade-offs, saying, okay, we're going to optimize for AI? Is there a trade-off there that you're not optimizing for traditional search as much, or is there a way to do both at the same time?
I think there's a way to do both at the same time. So a lot of what we found influences like AI search. Reddit continues to be a big one. Reddit also kind of piggybacks on Google SEO, and both of those can piggyback on blog posts that you put on the website or articles that you do and content that you generate, because the LLMs like to sit on top of that content. So We found so far over the last 2 quarters that we're able to consolidate that because the messaging is the same. The way that we kind of chop up the content and distribute it might be a little different, but getting involved, Google search is still very relevant. Owning keywords is still very relevant, probably will be for a long time. Google is also making a lot of what I think are smart moves in AI search. You can see a lot of the stuff they're doing. So I think they very much work together and we haven't had to make any trade-offs yet. The biggest trade-offs I think that we are intentionally making are what specific areas of the market are we going to go after with outbound and why, as we work to establish our beachhead and expand from there. Inbound, we get a lot from a number of different industries, but that's been the big trade-off outbound wise.
And what's the beachhead for you? What is that? Or how do you define it?
Yeah, so our beachhead now is what we would call distributor or distributor plus. So these are large distributing companies, mid-size or small distributing companies that are buying and selling goods. Distributor plus is the same companies, but maybe they have some light assembly or light manufacturing, co-packing, repacking, labeling, displays, cordia, whatever that is. We found that we can implement these companies very, very quickly. The scope of our product meets their needs extremely well. Our next pin in the beachhead strategy is more formal manufacturers. Now, that being said, a lot of manufacturers on the platform now that are very happy. With them, they just need a little bit more functionality built out in the manufacturing section of the product, which is what our team is working on now.
What about funding? So as I mentioned there in the intro, over 3 million raised to date. What have you learned about fundraising?
Yes, fundraising, the F word. So one of the things that I've learned is, one of the things I think we're always fundraising as number one, but I think the nature of that is starting to shift. So you see a little bit more this declining growth at all costs, and you see more companies, again, being able to do more with less. Early stage startups, the revenue per employee, that metric is going way, way up. So the need for funding, I think, is declining, even if you're building a tool that is much larger in scope than traditional SaaS products. At the same time, we've been successful in our fundraising process because, one, we built a really good team. We had a really good story, but we actually built and launched the product, had real paying users, and we were fortunate where we had a number of different term sheets and we could kind of choose who sat at the table with us. And the folks who have been along on this journey, whether it's our very first investor, Tom Morales, or some of the VCs that joined us in our last round, they have been amazing and supportive of the mission. They get where the future is going. So for us, it is choose the right people. When you do have to fundraise, choose the right people, but also understand that growth at all costs can make a lot of sense, but there's a lot you could do to build a really valuable, economically sound company, whether you're profitable or not. I think now so more than ever.
Final question for you. Let's zoom out 3, 5, 10 years into the future. What's the big picture vision look like?
Big picture vision is for Digit to be the operating system that makers and doers are using to run their entire operation. So where we're focusing right now is supply chain, inventory, purchasing, receiving, shipping, manufacturing. Think that in sales and marketing and finance and HR. Everything on one system. If you make or use or work with physical goods and products, that's what we want to be. So think Shopify for manufacturing and distribution. That's the ultimate goal for Digit. And for it to be a system that tells you and pushes and guides you into how to be that elite company versus a static system that has all of those bells and whistles, but still causes you to have to go in and do all the work yourself.
Amazing. I love the vision. I really love this conversation. Before we wrap here, if there's anyone listening in that wants to follow along with you, where should we send them?
Yeah, you can send them to our website at digit-software.com. You can see all of our case studies, articles, blog posts there. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, and we'll be producing our own internal podcast here shortly, standing up a YouTube channel with some great content that we'll be producing. So look for us on all those channels.
Amazing. Well, thanks a lot for the time. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Brett. It was a pleasure.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.